All right, let's look at this. Let's look at this thing. This console.log 123 at -1 transpiles to 44 kilobytes worth of code in ES5. The state of ES5 on the web. All right, this is pretty great. I wrote in 2017. I wrote an article showing web developers how they could deploy ES6 plus code, aka ES 2015, to production without needing to transpile it to ES5. This technique was liberating for website developers who wanted the freedom to write modern code without having to worry about transpilers or polyfill bloat. Unfortunately, while many website developers were able to use this technique, most JavaScript library authors could not. Library authors faced a lot more constraints than website developers because they don't control how their code is deployed. Also, since many of the popular build tools recommend developers exclude their node module directory from transpilation, library authors were forced to be extremely conservative, usually transpiling all the way back to ES5 in order to avoid permanently breaking sites or potentially breaking sites. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense. Because a lot of times you had to provide like these little out libraries or these out files, these transpiled files, and you just had to assume people were using ES5. Okay, this makes sense. But that was 7 years ago, and there's been a ton of advancements in JavaScript tooling space since then. The browser landscape has also changed tremendously, most notably IE11. The last remaining ES5 browser has stopped being supported by Microsoft in 2022, which meant many businesses could finally stop supporting it as well. Yes, I remember the death of IE11. That was a day of much celebration. That was a great day. Can we all agree that this was the greatest day for all web development? I remember when IE7 was just no longer being supported, and that was a great day. But the fact that you just didn't have just IE in general, great. The fact it took that long, I know, is painful. So what is the current state of ES5 on the web today? And what are the best practices for web developers building code for production? This article looks at the data we have to answer these questions. It also offers some concrete recommendations based on that data for both how website developers and library authors should approach legacy browser support moving forward. I'm curious because I want to see how bad is this transpilation. For me, this is that's the thing I'm most curious about because I'm surprised anyone still. I mean, I guess I'm not too surprised. At Netflix, we still have a bunch of devices that are older and can only do ES5. And so there's a bunch of transpilation that does happen today all the time for Netflix devices. And I'm not even sure if we have a specific ES6 only build. Everyone may still be getting ES5 only for all devices. I know it's the royal we. I'm not there anymore. But, I'm a shareholder, okay? And so when I look at the stock, I go like this. I'm a winner today. You know what? It's my birthday. The stock is up. I'm a winner today, okay? Winning. Hashtag today. Shareholder, by the way. Before digging into real-world data on ES5 usage, I want to clarify that there is nothing inherently wrong with either authoring or publishing ES5 code. I mean, maybe not technically, but morally questionable. JavaScript engines have been optimized for ES5 code for much longer than they have for modern code. So if you have old ES5 code that is still working, there's no reason to update it to make it modern. However, if you're authoring code in ES6 plus syntax, and then using a build tool to transpile it to ES5, that generally results in a lot of polyfill and transpiler bloat that can significantly increase the size of your final bundle. To illustrate this point, here's a particularly egregious example. So this is what I wanted to see, was this right here. So this is the thing. This right here, so an array with at -1. So if you don't know what at does, at allows for, effectively, it's just negative indexing, so you can do -1, which I believe should be 3. If you transpile this code to ES5 by hand, it would probably look something like the following. Yeah. Effectively. Whoopsies. However, if you transpile this single line of code with Babel and configure it to add polyfills, even if you limit it to just needing the polyfills based on usage in the source code, it includes, you need descriptors? An object? Symbols? Symbol to script match? Regexes? Why do you need all that? What are you guys doing? And ship that to prod. Wow. And goes from being 31 bytes to 44,000 bytes minified. That's a lot. That's a lot of bytes being minified. Dang. All of that for at. The real question is, does it have is even? It doesn't have is even or is odd. How about is? No, those are just a bunch of this references. Global this. It must have been minified, the function name. Dang. Big byte energy. I was hoping to see. Hold on. Let's see if can we find it. Can we find it? Date nan. What is this code? What does this even do? What is this string of new? What does this even do? Okay, well, now I just have to know. Invalidate. I could have chosen different... I feel like I could have chosen different ways to come up with this value than creating a string from a new date, passing in nan to not equal whatever this is. Wait a second. Look at this. Okay, I know we're not supposed to be looking at this code, but look at this for a second. UD equals invalidate. String new does not equal UD. Okay, so there must have been a time when providing a new date to with a nan did not provide invalidate. What is this code doing? I'm so excited. Okay, we gotta quit looking at it. It's like magic's going on in there. There's some form of magic, and I want to know. Let's see. The point of this example is not to shame Babel or Core.js. Those tools need to be able to support all possible ES6 plus code, which requires them to account for all sorts of edge cases, though this particular example doesn't have any. Instead, the point is to emphasize that choosing to support legacy browsers does come with a cost, and that cost can be significant. Agreed. Unfortunately, the problem is actually worse than just code bloat. If you look at the data below on how popular websites today are actually transpiling and deploying their code to production, it turns out that most sites on the internet ship code that is transpiled to ES5, yet still doesn't work in IE11. I've never been happier. That the only browser that was deprecated that still supports this doesn't even work. Oh, just the pure beauty of that statement is amazing. Meaning the transpiler and polyfill bloat is being downloaded 100% of their users, but benefiting none of them. The data. To understand the state of ES5 on the web, you have to look at three things, since all of these play a critical role in the final output of the code that we, as web users, receive. The default configurations of popular bundles and build tools, the state of the code found in popular JavaScript libraries, the state of the code deployed by website owners, default bundler and build tool configurations. Most bundlers and build tools are extremely configurable and offer almost unlimited control over the final output of code. Hold on for a second. This code is just like, or this song is just so negative. It makes me like angry. Ugh. I need something here. I've always really enjoyed this playlist. It just makes me feel happy on the inside. So we're going to do it. Okay. Sorry. I get, when songs feel negative, it makes me become negative. WASM, please save us. WASM's a long way away from being able to save us. And the reason why is that WASM just requires so much extra stuff. Like, yeah, you don't have to program in JavaScript, but you're still downloading a megabyte of crap, which is not great. So until you can get, to me, WASM's going to be WASM will mostly be used to just translate one app into a web app until there's like DOM bindings into WASM. And I'm not even sure if you can have DOM bindings into WASM. That probably just cannot happen. Just use Laravel Livewire, and none of this is a problem anymore. You just get a Lambo. I am going to do a lot of Laravel coming up. I'm even in talks with Laravel, hopefully, to figure out some sort of cool like build challenge type deal, which would be a lot of fun to do. Oh, GS Porto figured out that code. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Ah, yes, there we go. So if there's not that built-in, then you got to do this. You have to define a new built-in, toString, and this function occurs with value this time. Okay, and this is how so much internals get spread around. Function uncurry this, define built-in, so it has to uncurry this wherever that is. Oh, date proto must have a this object implied somehow. How is a get time being enforced when you grab a function off? I don't even get that. I assume uncurry this just simply. Okay, I'm getting distracted by nonsense. We're moving on. I'm refusing to go down this black hole. Most bundler and build tools are extremely configurable and offer almost unlimited control over the final output of code. However, in practice, most developers just use the defaults, so the defaults matter a great deal. Yes, this is true. What are those defaults? Specifically, do the defaults result in code being transpiled to ES5? The answer to that question, to answer that question, I took a look at the output generated by some of the most popular build tools, according to the most recent State of the JS survey, ordered roughly by popularity. BrowserList. I've never even heard of BrowserList. Not a build tool itself, but used by many build tools internally and is the most popular open source tool for configuring browser support targets. The defaults setting no longer includes any ES5 browsers. The last one was IE11, which was marked dead. Version 420. +1. That's so close. Why? What was that one for? Why? You were so close. Babel. Yes. Okay, so Babel defaults to ES5. Babel's documentation recommends setting a targets option, which uses browser list, but if none is specified, it will translate all code or transpile all code to ES5. Oh, wow. Webpack, but who uses Webpack? I'm not even sure how to use Webpack. TypeScript definitely does this. TypeScript always defaults to ES5. No, the doc currently claims it's ES3, but that's not true. Got him. I know, I'm just kidding when I say no one uses Webpack. It's a tongue-in-cheek joke, because here's the deal. Can I just be real with all of you guys for a second? Everybody on Twitter uses the latest and greatest build settings and poop out little nice Vite running projects. But when you get hired, you're using Webpack with a bunch of custom plugins that are hard to understand and build pipelines that are crazy. Downloading like endpoint data. How many people, type 1 in the chat, have some sort of configuration data for your build that's stored in a database? Come on, don't be afraid. Don't be upset that you happen to build and actually hit a database to get part of it. I know, it's real. This is a real thing. What the fuck? I just want you to know that we work in an environment where this actually happens, and we are writing an interpreted language. Okay, an interpreted language. A language that doesn't actually compile the machine code. It gets read and tokenized on the fly. And the on-the-fly tokenized language has to be compiled from one version to another version for this to work. It's crazy. Just, no matter how much you love the web, you have to agree that's just crazy. Next.js uses Babel to transpile, and by default sets browser list contained to modern browsers. Okay, ESBuild, no. Vite, no. Rollup, no. Parcel, no. Closure compiler, no. So if you're raw dogging Babel or using TypeScript, you're getting it. So those are the only two left. Okay. But very few people are actually using TypeScript as their own build system, and that's it. Often I've seen TypeScript used as purely a linter. Like if you're using just TypeScript, you're using it probably as a linter more than you are a builder. You're probably using JSDoc plus some TS files for type definitions if you need to use some sweet generics and all that stuff. Let's see. As this table shows, the vast majority of bundlers and build tools no longer transpile to ES5 by default. It's notable that newer tools do not support ES5 at all, which shows the trend is moving in that direction. I mean, time is just moving in that direction. That said, Babel is still the most popular tool to transpile JavaScript, and as a result, transpiling to ES5 is quite common on the web. But is it fair to say Babel's the most popular transpiling tool for JavaScript, or is Babel just the most popular one that you use through a service? Like you use through Rollup, you use through Webpack, you use through something else. See ES5 usage in the wild below for more details. It seems most popular, but I don't know if are people actually using it. Wait, did I not? I'm not. It's not. It's just taking me to the top of the page. I was going to see it, but it looks like I can't see it. All right, popular JavaScript libraries. In addition to looking at the popular build tools, I looked at some of the most popular libraries in use today. Again, based on the State of JS survey, in rough popularity order. To test each of these libraries, I created a bundle entry point that only imports the specific library using one line of code examples from the library's documentation. I then bundled the code using Rollup and Webpack to test the output to see if it included any ES6 plus syntax, specifically any ES6 plus syntax that isn't supported in IE11. Well, I guess the follow-up question is there need for that syntax? And if there is need, does the minifier not catch it and do it? Right? React, no. Date functions, 3JS, async await, arrow functions. But don't you get arrow functions? Do you get arrow functions? If you have a function that does not refer to this, doesn't it get auto arrow functioned in a minification? I just don't want to set up a pipeline to see if it gets minified. No. I just figured that I don't know which one we're using. I don't know which minifier is actually happening here, but I'm actually a bit surprised that it doesn't do that. Oh, I guess to be completely fair, actually, you know what? I'm stupid. Const my fun. Like if you try to minify it, right? It actually takes up more space. Does it? I wonder if it untranspiles that thing. Oh, I guess you get hoisting in a function, so it doesn't quite do the same thing as a const. So they have different semantic meaning. You know what's kind of funny? These two things have different semantic meaning in the sense that this is a function that gets hoisted. This function does not get hoisted, so you do run into you can't go like this. Because this would explodiate, but this wouldn't. It's kind of interesting how people use them, but it's not quite the same, right? Hoisting just means that it hoists the symbol, my fun, to be available for everybody to use. So you can define the function. I can do something like this, and this just works, right? Because the definition of my fund being a function is put at the very top. It hoists to as the function all the way up to the tippity top, right? It's nice. Hoist Tua, yeah. Interesting. I wonder, does this, now the real question is, does this thing minify back to being a regular function? No, it doesn't. Because isn't this technically more, there you go. That's where it gets the win, is when you just have a return, you have a single statement. There you go. So that minification was much better. Nice, okay. I had no idea. I figured that this thing could be, that could happen. Interesting. Hoisting is just reverse defer. I don't get that. I honestly don't. I don't know what you're saying. Anyways, okay. Arrow functions, spreading, destructuring. Spreading, I think, is one of the... Spreading, when using to copy data and all that, I think has been one of the greatest banes of JavaScript performance nightmares of all time. People use spread not realizing what it does. Spread them, boys. And it's by accident. I don't think that people are doing this on purpose. React hater talking here. Well, I'm just saying it causes copies, and people don't realize what they're copying, right? Azad, async await, arrow function, spread, destructuring. That's not surprising. Okay, Immer, I have not heard that name in a long time. Luxon, these. Okay, so there's still a lot of popular RxJS arrow functions. There's still a lot of popular ES5ings. All right, surprising. As a result above, I do want to rewind this. I'm gonna relate this, people. I'm gonna relate this to AI. Are you ready? Are you ready? This just shows how slow tech actually moves. These are the most popular libraries, and so many of them are still just ES5ing. Things move a lot slower. So when you go and join a company, if you think that you're about to hit the most modern tech of all time, you're not. It just won't happen. Things move so much slower. And so when AI inevitably is going to steal everybody's job, the integration time for AI to be able to steal a job, you need to measure on a decade. You don't measure on a month. Tech moves fast. Open source moves slow. I've personally never experienced that one. Most tech is a snapshot in the time in which it was created. This is notable because, as I mentioned earlier, most developers configure their bundlers and build tools to not transpile anything in the node modules directory, which was the main reason library authors historically felt they needed to continue transpiling to ES5. For example, as of when this article was published, Webpack's Babel loader documentation recommends a configuration that excludes React or node modules. Rollups plugin Babel document recommends excluding. I mean, the reason why you exclude node modules is very, very straightforward. What you use in your app versus what is downloaded into your node modules are giantly different. And so therefore, you will greatly increase your transpilation time if you look into your node modules. I assume that's the reason why. Like, that's the primary motivation. DHH was basically right about no build. Yeah, that's effectively it. This creates a problem for any website that is trying to support ES5. Unless they have a sophisticated understanding of what their build process is doing and how to properly configure it, they're likely bundling ES6 plus code with their ES5 code without realizing it. So this raises a question. Is this actually causing a problem for real websites, or are most of them properly configuring their tools? The next section looks at data from HTTP archive. Note, some of the libraries in the above table publish both ES5 and ES6 versions. Oh, that's cool. Typically with the ES5 version set on the main package field and the ES6 version set on either package module or package exports field. In these cases, I only looked at whatever version of the script was getting pulled in by the bundler when using the default configuration, since that's what most people use. And bundlers today default to package.module or package.exports over package.main. Okay, this makes sense. What is the perk of using JavaScript on the back end? Well, first off, you have simple type definitions shared across both sides. You have apparently simple validation shared across both sides, but that's typically not necessarily as true. What I mean by that is that you have validation that needs to run on the server, and so then you should be able to run that validation also on the client. But the problem, of course, is that validation on the client often differs than validation on the server. So it's not as simple. Just saying. You get to share logic. You apparently get to share logic. But all of that is not necessarily, like, the problem here is that that's not, all of this may not necessarily be true, but it is generally you could share some logic. So I think that's the goal. I think the real reason why people use it is that you're comfortable in JavaScript. You don't have to change from JavaScript. You get to do the thing you already know. And there's a lot of tools that are geared towards eliminating all complexity at the cost of money. And people just choose that because it's easier to wrap your head around one small thing than it is to be able to wrap your head around many different stuff. They don't want to use multiple languages. Yeah, I think a lot of people don't want to use multiple languages, have to use something like protobufs to be able to distribute types across different language or machines. It's isomorphic. I've used that term in the past unironically. I'm still pretty embarrassed about it. It is, yes. We've all used a pick. We all had a Fedora at one point, right? AI saves money. In what? Roderick, I just disagree with you in general. I've used the term isomorphic pick, so don't worry. I just simply disagree with you. I don't have any personal proof yet that AI saves money yet. Nobody interested in new syntax sugar, but I think big tech bosses are interested in cutting salary budget. I also doubt this too. I prefer idempotent. You know what the best part is? You work with a Canadian and they don't say idempotent. They say idempotent, and then you get confused, and they also say automata instead of automaton, and it confuses you. AI saves money, only $7 trillion a year. We just need $7 trillion to create the AI, and then it saves so much money. That's why, if you haven't seen OpenAI, $2,000. I mean, they got to raise money somehow. I mean, at some point, they need to make money, because when you spend billions upon billions, you got to do something. All right, ES usage in the wild. The three main tools developers use to transpile ES6 plus code to ES5 is Babel, TypeScript, Clojure compiler. Clojure compiler is actually really interesting and comes with a lot of pretty cool optimizations that I'm surprised is not used more often. It's pretty wild, the power of Clojure compiler. I would love to see more just talk and usage of it, right? It's pretty neat because it does a lot of these like super aggressive optimizations that could result in code errors, which is kind of crazy, but it does like really, like you can even do property renaming and minification, which is pretty crazy. So like long as you have everything typed out, it can go through and do like property renaming and all that. Pretty radical. All three of these tools include some form of polyfills and what are known as ES5 helper functions to avoid duplication in the final output. The most common ES5 helper function libraries used by these tools are Babel helpers, Core.js, Regenerator Runtime, TSLib, and JSComp. Core.js, bane of my time on TVUI, trying to reduce memory usage by removing modules that aren't needed. Oh man, we needed it for like one thing. We had a set polyfill, and that one set polyfill was just such a pain in the butt. Bye. Bye. Holden McGroin, please. Dude, you're subbing. You gotta, file a please unban me. I'll look at it in 10 minutes, okay? I expect a good result, okay? I expect a really good one. Let's see, many of the functions in these helper libraries are unique enough that it's possible to detect, even in minified code, which sites are using them by querying the HTTP archive, searching for the presence of these helper functions, rather than standard ES5 syntax, such as var and non-arrow functions. Helps to differentiate old ES5 code written by hand, usually fairly optimized, from newer ES5 code generated by a transpiler, usually fairly bloated. Ooh, very exciting. I did a search to see how common it was for popular websites, top 10,000 based on Crux popularity ranking, to include these helpers in the script bundles, then they've deployed to production. I also wanted to see how common it was for the sites served untransspiled ES6 plus syntax. This is what I found. 89% of sites serve at least one JavaScript file containing untransspiled ES6 syntax. Okay. 79% of sites serve at least one JavaScript file containing ES5 helper code. 68% serve at least one JavaScript file containing both ES5 helper code as well as untransspiled ES6 code. Same file. Let's go. Dude, that's crazy number, by the way. 68% are serving code they don't even need. If only you had one more percent. Are you sure you didn't already? You could have maybe math.ceil instead of math.floor. This last finding kind of blew my mind. It is kind of crazy because if you have ES6 plus syntax, it means you inherently do not need ES5 helper code. ES5 helper code only exists to prevent ES6 functions from blowing up. Oh, beautiful. To reiterate what I said earlier, because it warrants repeating, if a browser does not support ES6 plus syntax, such as IE11, which we don't use anymore, okay, then it will error when trying to load the script file that contains ES6 syntax. If the browser does support ES6 syntax, then it doesn't need any of these ES5 helper code or any of the legacy polyfills. You know what you could do as a website? Hear me out on this one. You could try catch your whole JavaScript experience when loading up, and if it blows up, you then download the ES5 version of it. And because they're already using IE11, they're probably on some crazy legacy environment. So if it's slower anyways, like, oops, that sucks. Sorry, it already sucks for you. Like, right? If you want a simple one, just try catch the whole window object, every last thing of it. If IE return. My favorite thing I did see during these days, though, was the IE tax. If you're using Internet 7 Explorer, they actually added a tax to your purchase. How great is that? Can we all agree this is the most beautiful thing we've ever seen in our entire lifetime? Obviously, this was from a long time ago. This was 2012, but still, absolutely amazing. Which is why at some point with my coffee company, if we decide to go from the terminal and we decide to have a non-terminal version of our application, we're going to have a JavaScript tax. Come on, tell me how exciting that is. Tell me that's not fantastic. I just like JS so much. Yeah, how great is that? How great is that? We're gonna charge you $2 for using JavaScript. Force everyone to go back to the term. Yeah, that's the goal. Terminal version first. Yeah. To double check the results of this query were accurate, I manually tested 20 random sites on the list and confirmed that they do in fact include both ES5 helper code as well as ES6 plus syntax and some of the same script bundles, and that those script bundles do indeed fail when it loaded into IE11. That's so funny. It's so funny that you include code to allow IE11 to run, and then you also include code that cannot run in IE11. That it's just crazy that 68% of sites do that. Keep in mind that these are not just random sites on the internet. They are about 10,000 most popular websites in the world. So I guess Netflix is probably on there, which account for the vast majority of all web page usage globally. What does this mean? By the way, when you're getting the 10,000 most popular websites, do you have to be a little bit careful? Like, are you getting a lot of prawn here? What did Lithium say? I feel like I can imagine how this conversation went in the room when they came up with it. Someone brought up the concept, someone else high-fived them, and then Tej walked in and they pitched it to him and he approves. Yeah, that's pretty much what happened. Feels kind of grody. I'd be careful of the top 20 most visited websites. What does all this mean? For a site to serve users code that contains both ES5 helpers and untransposed ES6 syntax, there's really only two plausible explanations. The site doesn't need ES5 or does not support ES5 browsers, but some of their dependencies transpile to ES5, so therefore ES5 code appears in their output. The site intended to support ES5 browsers, but they didn't realize that some of their dependencies published untransposed ES6 plus syntax, and they didn't configure their bundlers to transpile code in node modules. Regardless of the explanation, the fact that so many of the world's most popular websites are serving so much unnecessary code is a strong indicator that the defaults of our tools currently recommend are not working. It's shocking that it's this large. It's shocking that that's a very long, I know it is bad. It actually genuinely is bad. Because it is a lot of just crap stuff that you just don't need. I'm surprised. I'm personally surprised. Recommendations. For library authors, the original rationale for why library authors should transpile to ES5 was that most sites needed to transpile to ES5 anyways. However, given that 89% of the top 10,000 websites currently ship some untranspiled ES6 plus syntax, the rationale is no longer valid. Yes, I'd agree. It's not even that. I feel like that one, this one right here, 89% ship at least. He got the wrong number. Oh, no, never mind. I read I had 68 in my head. I'm the incorrect one. 90% of the top 10,000. I am the wrong one. Okay. Given the data presented in this article, it definitely does not make sense for JavaScript library authors to transpile their code to ES5 anymore. Practically speaking, library authors have no information about the browser support needs of the websites importing them. And honestly, if you support that, you probably have a build specially for those type of websites and an endpoint specially for those kind of websites. So therefore, you probably have a bespoke build system anyways because of the fact that some libraries come with ES6 features and you have to transpile your node module directory anyways. So why not just simply not do that and let them who have the bespoke behavior do that? I'm just saying. So it doesn't make sense for them to be making that decision for all customers of their library. At the same time, library authors shouldn't assume that all customers of their library will be able to run it through a sophisticated build process. It's important that their published code uses fully standard JavaScript and works in the current set of widely used browsers. Fair. This sounds like an absolute nightmare. It is. It is an absolute nightmare. It really is, because I just tried Clojure Compiler and it broke everything. Not great on complex web apps. Yeah, there's a lot of cool things you can do with Clojure Compiler though. So I would check around and play around with some of its options. Like even the non-optimized minified build can make it so it works really, really well. It can actually make smaller builds by a significant portion. The tech industry is slow to adapt to new stuff. It won't be slow to adapt to things that will save them money. This is just demonstrably not true. Like, this is just Rodek, this is just not true at all. Like at all, at any point in the tech industry, this is not true. I'll have to give it more depth. Give it a look in more depth. This is very interesting. Yeah, it's not true at all. Like, it's not true at all. For anyone that's worked at any company ever knows for a fact this is not true. If you're not familiar with Baseline, it's an effort by the WebDX community group within the W3C to help developers easily identify features that are stable and well supported by all major browsers and browser rendering engines across desktop and mobile. A feature is considered a baseline widely available if it has been available in stable versions for all 4 major browsers for at least 30 months. Oh, wow. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty stable. That's pretty stable. And to kind of further put that point home, Rodek, how many stories are there? Countless stories of I saved $30,000 a month on our servers because I made this one change, but nobody made this change for years. Like, it happens constantly. Like, that one Ludicity article, it is a continuous thing. GTA 5 loading. Yeah, they literally set megabytes every single time. It's just not true. Like, I hate to break this to you. Companies, let me say it this way. It is better to attempt to work on new features than it is to fix old problems. It's as simple as that. New features will give them more business. Old problems will save them money. It is better to continue to earn that money and potentially get new money as opposed to making your process more efficient. A lot of companies operate that way because they have a limited amount of engineers they can employ to begin with. Yeah, of course, old problems sometimes lead to churn, but when the average stay at a company is 18 months, churn is almost inevitable in the tech sector as it is. I think a lot of people just look at churn as an inevitable part of tech. And the thing is you go from one company and you go to a new company, and guess what? They're still doing the same thing. You just go to a new company that's doing it. Then retire and let the new CTO inherit all the old problems. Bada bing, bada boom. But you get paid to 10 to 20% more. That's how you get more money, is by switching jobs, which is truly unfortunate. I think that a lot of companies really need to take a hard look at that specific thing. This right here. We'll talk about it in a moment. Dang it. I'll say it anyways. I do think this is by far one of the biggest problems with tech companies right now. We have about an 18-month tenure rate. And the reason why we have an 18-month tenure rate is because if I switch jobs, I can get potentially a 10% increase in pay. Sure, the company you're leaving doesn't have to pay that extra 10%. They're saving money. But the problem is that when you leave, you inevitably cause a gap. That gap is just simply no one there to fulfill your position. Then you finally hire someone that's going to fulfill that position. Let's say this is 1 month. You're pretty fast at hiring. Then after that, the person who gets hired takes how many months to get up to speed to what you were doing? Is this going to be 2 weeks to become somewhat effective to 2 months to becoming actually replacing you? Right? This is, by the way, this is considered a very fast turnaround. I'm only suggesting 3 months right now. That means you just paid 2.5 years of that 10% increase instead of just giving the person the increase to begin with. So why not just pay your employees more that are there? You know there's churn. You know tribal knowledge is worth a lot. So lean in and just pay people more, knowing that this time is coming up. When 18 months, 1 year passes, give them a better raise, knowing for a fact you just gained tribal knowledge that is durable. Stop being reactive. Stop waiting for someone to leave your company to give them a raise. And the new guy still gets 10%. Here we got 8% mandatory increase because of unions. It usually goes with inflation. Okay, interesting. Hey, Lithium, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. Thank you, Lithium. Let's go, Lithium. Thank you, Lithium. The main benefit of targeting something like Baseline Weekly Available is that it's a moving target, meaning it won't get stuck in the past. Likely, like what happened with targeting ES5 and what is currently happening with the ES module target used by Next.js, Vite, and Parcel. Library authors can configure their build systems to target Baseline widely available. I said weekly. Widely available features now with the following browserless query. Oh, cool. That's pretty cool. Look at that. Also crazy that browserless wrote their own transpiler or their own compiler. Oh my gosh, why did you write your own language? Why would you write your own language? What is this? Why would you do this? It means you have to build your own LSP if you want your own autocomplete. Oh, don't do that. Don't write your own language. Generally speaking, it's a bad plan, okay? It just is really bad. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. You don't need it. You don't need a DSL. You never needed a DSL. I know it's fun, but it's only fun when you're first writing it. It's not fun when someone says, I need to add one. It's not fun when someone says, I need a variable. It's never fun. It's not fun. It then sucks. And then all of a sudden you need error handling. And then all of a sudden you realize you've just built out a full compiler and it's not fun. It starts fun and it ends horrible. A good type system solves this. A shitty type system solves this. This is just target. This is literally just target number. What is it? Feature available length or time. I don't know. Whatever the thing is, nullable and then number. Like, it's not even a hard thing. It's like nothing. Nix, in fact, fixes this. Just use Lua already. Right? It's crazy. By the way, Lithium, I would like to say thank you very much. Hopefully you've heard something back. Thank you. Let's see. Because I can't really imagine when you should. But Primogen, when would a DSL be a good solution? Generally speaking, I avoid DSLs until I avoid DSLs. Convention, configuration, avoid DSLs. Here's the general problem with DSLs, right? You eventually see a problem that looks like a DSL could be nice, right? So we look at this thing right here, which is the browser list query. This looks like a fine case, maybe, for a DSL. The problem is that once you start doing this, you start going and someone's going to want some way to relate it to something else. You could imagine that you would want to be able to have Chrome and then based on one set of features, be able to do something else. And all of a sudden you need to be able to relate fields. You need to be able to effectively +1. You need to be able to error handle when you've written a poor string and explain why that string is not good. And once you get into this area, it becomes exceptionally hard to work with DSLs. And so, typically speaking, you either have configuration or you have convention. And I would rather stick with one of those two than anything else. Like provide a nice API for setting something up or just have a nice complete object that could describe this exact thing right here and all of its options as opposed to the discovery of a DSL. Because at the end of the day, you're on the hook for building this thing. And tokenizers, they're kind of fun to write. Lexers, they're kind of fun to write. Semantic analyzers, they're kind of fun to write, but they're not fun to maintain. As somebody who did it for Falcor. Can I find Falcor router? Hold on. One of these will have it. Hold on, let me look at this. Let me just look at this for a quick second. I want to say it's this thing. Tokenizer, parse tree. Okay. I'm not saying I didn't write a tokenizer at some point, okay, for my job. I'm not saying that I didn't do a parse tree for this kind of crap. I wrote it. It's not fun. Don't do a DSL. Don't do a DSL. He admits, I know. You're still the last committer. I know I'm the last committer. I committed atrocities. But you can't stop me. I can't. You're right. I cannot stop you. But please don't do it. Generally speaking, it's a bad idea. You have to have such good... there's just so many things that go wrong. Even just documentation on how to use it, the explanation. You have to write up like really technical stuff to precisely define your thought process. Because when someone reads this, they may actually have different thought processes. All right, now you convinced me. Okay, gosh, shut up. If a site needs to support more browsers than those covered by baseline widely available, that's 100% fine. That site can always configure their build system to further transpile any libraries they're importing. The point is that this is a decision best made by the website developer, not the library author. Facts on facts. Great call for website developers. The fact that so many popular websites ship both untranspiled ES6 plus syntax and ES5 helpers in the same script bundle is clear indication that the practice of excluding node modules directory from transpilation is not a good practice. This is so interesting. Crazy. I've been arguing that this is not a good practice since 2017. I wonder but what about build times? This has to make build times horrible. Most developers I talked to didn't want to follow this advice because doing so would slow down their builds. These days, though, build tools have gotten significantly faster. Okay. So I must be incorrect. Also, sites can configure their builds to only process code and node modules when building for production. Facts, okay. In development, the code should still run just fine on any browser that developer is using. especially if the library author has taken the advice I gave above and target baseline widely available. Okay, I guess my only one thing that I was going against this entire time, saying that maybe it's not as big of a deal, which I do agree. If you're going to do that, you could do just for production builds. Seems fine. As mentioned above, the point of this article is not to blame or shame the website or tool authors based on these findings. I also want to make sure it's clear that I'm definitely not suggesting that website should still be supporting IE11. If anything, these findings suggest that supporting IE11 is not a necessity for most businesses, even large ones with global customer base. The main points I want readers to take away are ES5 is no longer something that build tools or JavaScript libraries should target by default. Agreed. Build tools and libraries should not use a fixed browser support policy. Seems fine. Websites developers who import third-party libraries should process those libraries as part of the build system. You know what? I actually kind of like the Ginger Bill thing, which is vendor those libraries. Maybe package management isn't that great. I don't know. Just something to think about. Cross-browser support is not something that you should solely rely on your build tool to handle for you. That's also fair. Hopefully this article has been useful for anyone who still worries about ES5 support or to anyone trying to convince others not to worry. If you're curious whether the site is serving script bundles that contain ES5 legacy helpers mixed with untranspiled ES6 plus code, you can search your site in the data. Here we go. With JSC helpers, with TSC helpers, with Baber helpers, with regenerator helpers, with ES5 helpers, with ES6 script, with any ES5 helpers and ES6. Why are you doing this to my boy? Look at what they did to my boy. Sucks. Just check the difference between excluding and including node modules is excluding 5.18 seconds versus including as 16.44. Yeah, I mean that is a real amount of time. But I think the suggestion was only do that for production builds, which production builds you're not really bound by seconds. Is that fair? I think that's fair. If you need the release to production and 5 seconds makes a difference, you're probably maybe a little too fast. Maybe you don't need to go at that speed. We could all just take a little bit of a chill pill. Either way, this is actually just a really great article in the sense that I really like the... First off, it's great reading an article that's not written by an LLM. But second, I'm surprised it's this big of a problem. I just thought this wasn't a problem anymore. And I'm even more surprised that this turns into 44,000 bytes minified. I just wasn't expecting that. We all learned something. Dev in production like a cowboy. I mean, you mean like low, like levels? So you just want me to earn millions a year? Okay, buddy. Maybe I don't want that millions a years. I want that handcrafted artisanal go for broke app. Okay, buddy? The name is going for broke artisanally crafted application. A gen.